In the history of European space exploration, there have been pivotal moments, projects, or missions that marked a turning point, moments we will remember. For example, the arrival of the Rosetta mission on Comet 67P, Churyumov-Gerasimenko in 2014 was a pivotal moment, as was the Mars Express mission, which has been studying and photographing the surface of Mars since 2004. Another moment was the launch of the Ariane 1 rocket, carried out on Christmas Eve in 1979. Just as we remember this first launch of an Ariane rocket, we might also remember the inaugural launch of Ariane 6, as it could be the last European rocket in the Ariane family and perhaps the most important one. In this video, we will explain why Ariane 6 is so important, the history of its design, how it is built, and its performance. By the end of this video, we will discuss the future of this rocket, its versions, and the planned updates for the coming years, as well as the competitive landscape it will face. The history of the Ariane rockets begins in the 1960s when European countries started to understand the importance and advantage of developing a common space project. France, in particular, was the first country to create its own space agency, CNES, founded in 1961, and in the following years developed the Diamond rocket, which was first launched in 1965 from Algeria. In England, the Europa program was developed, funded by the United Kingdom and partially by France and Germany. These three countries together formed ELDO, one of the two organizations that merged in 1975 to create ESA. Italy initially focused on the San Marco program, which in the 1960s and 1970s led to the development of rockets and satellites and their launch from the Malindi base in Kenya. With the failure of the Europa rocket program, which suffered from significant technological problems, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom joined forces to develop the Ariane program. France played a central role in the creation of these rockets since they derived from the Diamond launcher, and the launch base would be in French territory, in Guyana. Moreover, in France, the political will to follow this project was the strongest. Germany was still dealing with the consequences of being divided into two and having lost World War II, which imposed restrictions by the United States on the development of missile technologies. Italy was supportive and participated in the Ariane program from the start, but to a lesser extent, as it was still engaged in the San Marco project. This setup led to the creation of the Ariane 1 rocket, first launched on December 24, 1979. Ariane 1 was a particularly effective four-stage rocket, capable of carrying about 1.8 tons into low Earth orbit. The technological setup with which it was built remained conceptually similar up to Ariane 4, a three-stage liquid fuel rocket, with a capacity that reached up to about 7,000 kilograms in the fourth version. This latter version was a vehicle used by Europe until 2003, with a total of 116 launches, of which only 3 failed. In the 1990s, Ariane 5 was introduced, which had a completely different setup, very similar to what Ariane 6 is today, but more on that later. Ariane 5, significantly larger and heavier than the previous rockets, was used until 2023, when it made its last launch on July 6. The approach to constructing this rocket changed radically in the 1980s when its actual design began. A new engine called Vulcain, powered by liquid oxygen and hydrogen, was developed to propel it, and the first stage was equipped with 2 solid fuel boosters. Finally, in 2012, ESA announced that Ariane 6 would be designed and built. But to understand how this latest Ariane vehicle came to be, we need to return to 2012 and 2014, when European space changed dramatically. Let's open a small parenthesis to understand how and especially who manages European rockets. Immediately after the successful launch of Ariane 1 in 1979, the European Space Agency decided that to manage the launch of Ariane rockets, as well as to sell their services on the international market, a real and independent company needed to be created. Thus, in 1980, Ariane Space was born, a company owned by all the countries that had collaborated on the Ariane program. In 1980, Ariane Space was effectively the world's first private company focused on rocket launches. However, this company did not build the Ariane rockets, which were instead designed and built by a consortium of European companies led by a French company called Aérospatiale. Through numerous mergers and ownership changes, this company has become what we now call Airbus. In 2012, The European Space Agency, which remained the entity responsible for the funding and strategic choices of all Ariane rockets, decided it was time to build an Ariane 6 and chose the design of a rocket built with 3 solid fuel boosters, a second stage also with solid fuel, and a third stage with liquid fuel, powered by a Vinci engine. This engine, which had been under development in France for several years, promised to be the first developed in Europe capable of restarting in space. This version of Ariane 6 was called PPH, as it had 4 P145 solid fuel boosters in the first stage and an H45 liquid fuel engine in the third stage. ESA's strategy with this proposal for a smaller but effective Ariane 6 than Ariane 5 was as follows. A new version of Ariane 5 would be created, with a second stage powered by the Vinci engine and an increased payload capacity of about 1 ton. This version, called Ariane 5 ME, would enter service in 2018, while the new Ariane 6 in 2021. This way, ESA aimed to create 2 rockets that would work together and serve different customers and market segments. The project for Ariane 6 required €4 billion for its development and was preliminarily approved in 2012 during the ESA ministerial meeting held in Naples. However, on June 16, 2014, a bomb was dropped. A few months before the proposal to develop this Ariane 6 was to be voted on again by ESA member countries at the end of that year, 2 companies, one French and one German, presented a counter-proposal. These companies were Airbus and Safran, 2 giants of the European aerospace and defense sector. During a ceremony at the Élysée, they proposed creating a new company, a 50-50 joint venture between Safran and Airbus, which would manage all the activities of production and design of space launchers previously divided mainly between the 2 companies. This company would be called Airbus Safran Launcher and had a new proposal for an Ariane 6. This new rocket would be cheaper and more efficient, with 2 versions. The first, called Ariane 6.1, would have 2 P145 solid fuel boosters, a liquid fuel first stage powered by the Vulcain 2 engine, used until then on Ariane 5, and a liquid fuel second stage powered by the Vinci engine. The second version, called Ariane 6.2, would have 4 solid fuel boosters. This new strategy, which would allow the 2 rockets to be built based on the same technology, made this Ariane 6 cheaper to build than the version proposed by the European Space Agency. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel.